There is intense fighting on all the fronts as Israel's Air Force hit over 200 targets in the Gaza Strip, Syria, and Lebanon over the weekend. Notably, this included about 20 strikes on airports in Syria to prevent them from being used by Turkey, while a senior Hamas terrorist was eliminated in Lebanon. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, the IDF is attacking from every direction, and Hamas should be very concerned. This maneuver's stated purpose is to advance a hostage deal, and the IDF spokesperson's office has declared publicly that we will not stop the fighting until Hamas brings back the hostages. IDF ground forces have once again entered the Sajaiya area in Gaza under the cover of air and artillery strikes, as well as expanding the operations in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, also near the sea. The IDF forces, including Division 36, have begun their activity in the Morag corridor and released documentation from the first activity in that area. The forces eliminated dozens of terrorists and located stocks of weapons and ammunition. The IDF and the Shin Bet also announced that a terrorist who was involved in the abduction and murder of the Bibas family members was eliminated. And meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, senior American officials have conveyed to Egypt that any talk of rehabilitating the Gaza Strip without eliminating Hamas is pointless. And further afield, ahead of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington for a meeting with President Trump on Monday, TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will bring us all the updates on diplomatic steps between Israel and the United States. Details related to Gaza, Saudi Arabia, and Iran are all on the table, and Mati will also give us a forecast regarding Israel's tariffs. And of course, we will also have an update on the Iranian threats to hit Diego Garcia, the British-owned Indian Ocean island that houses a base that is used by the United States Air Force. President Donald Trump has sent a fleet of strategic bombers to this base, part of an air and sea armada that includes enough firepower to completely destroy Iran's nuclear weapons programs, as well as much more of that country. So we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 548 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are acting under the control of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And a second before we begin, I want to invite you to click the subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. So if you supported our Rebuild Israel campaign, thank you so much. And heads up, a special surprise is coming your way very soon. And if you haven't joined yet, now is the time. Visit tbn.org/rebuildisrael and be part of rebuilding the land of Israel. Today, we begin with the news from the Gaza Strip that overnight Saturday, the IDF expanded its ground maneuver in the north and in the south and took control of additional areas in Bet Hanun, Bet Lahia, Rafah, and along the Morag corridor. And meanwhile, Air Force and artillery core batteries operated to strike terror targets and support the ground forces. And in the last 24 hours, the Air Force has attacked 160 terror targets, including individual terrorists, terror infrastructure, tunnels, and command centers. And according to Palestinian publications, dozens of terrorists were eliminated in the strikes, along with several defined as commanders in Hamas's senior command levels, as well as many lower-level operatives. Arab media portals have reported extensively on the intensification of IDF strikes in different parts of the Gaza Strip, and according to publications, armed forces advanced in Sajaiya in the eastern part of Gaza City. The operation in the area began on Friday following a widespread evacuation announcement by the IDF spokesperson to the population prior to an attack on Hamas terror infrastructure, which is trying to rebuild its capabilities amongst the civilian population. And at the same time, Palestinian sources reported strikes and shellings in the Khan Yunis area, resulting in the elimination of at least 10 terrorists in the last 24 hours. And meanwhile, a year and a half after the October 7 attack, Israel eliminated Muhammad Hassan Awad, who's a senior figure in the Mujahideen brigades of Hamas. And according to the Hamas announcement, he served as a member of the military council and the head of the intelligence apparatus, but that's not what makes him unusual. In a statement by the IDF and the Shin Bet, it was reported that he was likely also involved in the murder of Shiri Bibas and her 2 children, Ariel and Kfir. On October 7th, Awad repeatedly raided Kibbutz Nir Oz, and in addition to leading the massacre and the kidnapping of the Bibas family, he was involved in managing the kidnapping of Gad Hagai and Judy Lynn Weinstein. He was also involved in managing the abduction of Thai citizens from Thailand. This evil man also engaged in recruiting terrorists in Judea and Samaria and inside Israel to advance attacks. But he won't be doing that any longer. And meanwhile, on Monday, Defense Minister Israel Katz announced the expansion of the IDF's activities in the southern Gaza Strip, and hours later, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed that the purpose of the activity is to take control of the Morag corridor between Rafah and Khan Yunis, where forces have already operated in the past. And additionally, the IDF spokesperson's unit published documentation on Saturday evening of the first activity of Division 36 forces who returned to operate in the Gaza Strip and began their activity in the Morag corridor. This is the first time that the IDF forces are operating there, and in parallel with the IDF's activity in additional areas in the Gaza Strip and beyond, in order to apply additional pressure against Hamas. It was also reported that as part of the operation, the division's forces are operating in the Rafah area to locate and destroy terror infrastructure that is remaining there. So far, the forces have located weapons and eliminated dozens of terrorists with the assistance and the guidance of the division's fire complex. And senior security officials in Israel say that Hamas is very concerned about the wide-ranging ground maneuver of the IDF in the Gaza Strip in an attempt to pressure Hamas to return to the negotiating table to discuss the Witkoff plan for the return of the remaining hostages from Gaza to Israel. According to them, Hamas's concerns are increasing, and it is worried that the operation might expand to a full conquest of the Gaza Strip and the toppling of Hamas. Partially in response to these concerns, Hamas has launched a new psychological warfare maneuver that is aimed at steering public opinion in Israel so that it will put pressure on the political echelon to stop the IDF ground maneuver in the Gaza Strip. The spokesman for Hamas's military wing, Abu Ubaidah, claimed yesterday in a special statement that he published that half of the hostages are alive and they are located in areas of which the IDF spokesperson's unit issued an evacuation order in recent days. He went on to declare that we decided not to move the hostages from these areas and they will remain there under strict security mechanisms. Senior security officials believe that Hamas is trying to deter Israel from continuing its military activities in the Gaza Strip, which is expected to intensify in the coming days. But if this is what they're trying to do, it will fail. If Hamas does not return the negotiating table over the Witkoff plan, Israel is determined to continue the military operation in the Gaza Strip and expand it until the entire strip is conquered. A security source added that until the start of the fighting, Mohammed Sinwar had all the time in the world to rebuild military capabilities and plan attacks on the IDF and on Israeli civilians. The new reality in the Gaza Strip forces Sinwar to divide his attention to internal affairs as well, due to fears of demonstrations, looting, and demands to leave the combat zones, and even civilians leaving the Gaza Strip amidst rebellion and desertion. In Cairo, Egypt, they are waiting for meetings with senior Israeli and American officials, including the Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, who is expected to visit the region, according to an Arab media report on Saturday morning. In addition, senior Egyptians were updated by their American counterparts that any talk of reconstruction without ending Hamas's civil rule in the Gaza Strip would be pointless. American sources stressed that eliminating Hamas and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip are two central pillars for calm. And according to the newspaper El Akbar, which is a close affiliate to Hezbollah, Cairo's demands focus on bringing supplies into the Gaza Strip to prevent mass starvation. And further reporting incidents that in Egypt they received clear signals that talking about the reconstruction process in the Gaza Strip at the present time is unacceptable. So against this background, the Egyptian Foreign Ministry is moving towards postponing the conference to raise funds which it had planned regarding the reconstruction program in April. This plan was presented at the Arab League Summit. And meanwhile, sources told El Akbar that a Fatah delegation arrived in Cairo on Friday to meet with Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Attai. And according to the sources, he will tell them that Egypt will not accept the complete removal of Hamas, and the Palestinian factions must operate positively amongst themselves. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on every development in the Gaza Strip. And as always, we ask you to keep spreading the truth by sharing our videos on YouTube and following us on social media. And most importantly, don't forget to click that subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time. And if you'd like to do more, you can donate to us so we can create more videos like this one. Click the donate button on YouTube or visit our website at www.tbnisrael.com/give. And switching our focus to the northern arena, in recent days the Air Force has acted to thwart an attempt by the Turkish army to gain a foothold inside Syria. Significant forces of the Turkish Air Force have attempted to deploy in bases formerly used by the Assad regime, but in a lightning operation led by the Air Force Commander Major General Tomer Bar, the Air Force acted to bomb these bases and put them out of commission. I'm talking about Tadmor and T4, both of which will be familiar to anyone who has been watching everything that's happening in Syria in the past several years. They have been around for a long time, playing a role in the drama between Israel and Syria, but they won't be doing that any longer. An IDF source described the attack by saying, "No structure remains standing. We hit planes, radar systems, control towers, parking ramps, all the runways, and all the buildings and warehouses. We simply destroyed both airports." As mentioned, the operation came after Israel understood that, and alongside attempts to arm and rebuild the Syrian army by the Turks, the harbor imperial ambitions to renew their grip on Syria and turn it into a Turkish protectorate complete with a large and strategic military presence in Syria. Israel, on the other hand, had determined that this cannot be allowed to occur. And in fact, a senior Israeli official told Reuters that if Turkey crosses the red lines in Syria, Israel will respond. Defense Minister Israel Katz added some details recently during a tour of the Northern Command, laying down two policies that Israel will maintain in Syria. One, that southern Syria will be demilitarized of any armed forces, and also that the Air Force freedom to fly in Syrian airspace will be preserved. In addition, Katz also sent a strong warning to the regime of interim Syrian President Abu Muhammad al-Julani, saying that if he allows any elements to change the situation in Syria in order to threaten Israel, he will bear the price himself. With this in mind, the IDF has not only destroyed these two very important air bases in Syria that the Turks were looking to take possession of. Over the last few days and weeks, the paratroopers of the IDF have also fanned out all over Syria, finding strategic weapon stockpiles, confiscating some and demolishing others. The IDF spokesperson's unit issued an updated statement on Saturday that the Paratroopers Brigade combat team under Division 210's command continues to operate in Syria to remove threats to the state of Israel and to the residents of the Golan Heights in particular. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development regarding Syria, and we ask you to help us spread the truth by subscribing to this YouTube channel and share the truth with more people. I also want to give a huge thank you to all of you who directly contributed by donating, if it's here on YouTube or through our website at tbnisrael.com/give. Every dollar that you donated helped us create more content from Israel and share the truth of what's happening. Thank you so much for all the prayers and the support. Now, we'll move on to TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani, who will bring us to the latest developments regarding US President Donald Trump's efforts to force Iran to the negotiating table. As has been widely reported, B-2 strategic bombers have been deployed to the island base at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. These aircrafts are capable of carrying nuclear weapons as well as the giant bunker buster massive ordnance penetration bombs that weigh 12 tons, which was developed specifically to strike the Islamic Republic's underground nuclear facilities. So Mati, what does the future hold for the United States-Iran relations, and what will be discussed during the meetings between Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House on Monday? And the question on everyone's mind is, what about the tariffs that Trump's imposed on Israel?
We're going to try to unpack everything that's been happening in this region, and specifically when it relates to the US-Israel relations, the US-Iran relations, and how the Houthis play a part in this entire story. But first, let's back up. This has been a very confusing couple weeks, and I would agree with you if you're starting to lose track of everything that's happening in this region. I myself have been reading the news lately, and it feels at times like we're reading the same headlines time and time again, and as if they're almost recycling the news. But this week and the last couple of days have actually seen a change in the way things are happening in this region. And what we're seeing is an initial crack in the way Iran is relating to its proxy warfare and the threats made by the US administration and its allies, us, the Israelis. So let's break it all down. What have we been seeing over recent weeks? We've seen the Iranians push back strongly on any attempt by the Americans to have direct negotiations, on any attempt to bring true supervision or an end to their nuclear military capability, and a strong pushback on the topic of military options carried out by the US or Israel. The Iranians have gone so far as to, one, say they won't negotiate under this level of pressure, and secondly, and more importantly for our story today, is they've made threats against the American forces stationed around Iran, going as far as saying they will attack American forces in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean or attempt to attack other parties in this region. All the while, the US has been carrying out bombing missions in Houthi-controlled northern Yemen for more than 3 weeks at this point. A larger scale, more intense level of attacks than we've seen so far in this region. And it seems like finally things are starting to change. Now I want to say something here. We're in a really weird situation where the media that's coming out, or the news and press releases that are coming out both from the US administration and the Iranian administration, are made by let's call it sources that will remain unnamed. No one in the government is officially standing behind them, not a foreign minister, not a minister of defense. There are a lot of statements, especially by the Iranians, that are sort of released into the media sphere, or released by sources that will remain unnamed within the government. And that gives us the sense and the concern that possibly this is part of the negotiation tactic. We've covered over recent weeks the readiness level of the US forces, specifically aerial assets, and the Israeli forces, specifically the Israeli Air Force, and we are all primed and ready to attack in Iran. And the Iranians know that. So what they've started doing is they've started scaling back their public support of Houthi rebels, and they're doing this because they want to distance themselves from something that they've realized is an issue that the US is not going to back down from. Not only that, obviously there's global support for fighting against anyone who's planning to disrupt global maritime trade, which is what the Houthis are doing, not planning to do, they're actively doing. The Iranian government saying, look, we're less supportive of the Houthi rebels and we're willing to negotiate. We're willing to talk, we're willing to come to the table and discuss. And this is happening at a time where the pressures have mounted to the point where we were just talking about this the other day in the TBN Israel podcast. It could take one big mistake by an Iranian official, by someone in the US armed forces, by someone in the Houthi forces, where someone thinks that an imminent attack is coming and all the red buttons are pressed. And they're trying to scale back from that. They're trying to walk back from that position, the Iranians of course, and reach a position where they can start negotiating. They're not built and they're not ready for full-on assault by the US administration. They have no chance of winning against a US and Israel combined attack, let alone a prolonged attack against them combined with sanctions and diplomatic pressure. They want to be released back from their restriction of the sanctions. They want to reposition their place at the table in the Middle East from a place of not having full military threat, but being able to act more freely. And I think that's the beginning of what we're seeing. But bear in mind that the Iranians are shrewd, very clever and very sophisticated negotiators. This all might be just words that they're releasing with absolutely no plan to change their actions, and they will be going back to proxy warfare the minute they feel the US pressure is released from them. Speaking of the US, as you know, the US government has placed a bunch of tariffs on many different countries and many goods coming into that country. And the Israeli Prime Minister is traveling there with the purpose of canceling out the tariffs that were going to be imposed on goods exported from Israel. Israel, remember, is an island economy. Much of the goods from this country, or almost all of them, are exported. And many of them are, by the way, technological or sophisticated in their nature. Weapon systems, software packages, computer chips, many different things. Of course, what we don't want is tariffs imposed by them, definitely not by a trade partner such as the US. One more big issue on the table, of course, and Netanyahu is going to discuss with President Trump the issue of Iran. How we're going to fight Iran, how we're going to make sure that the Iranians don't weasel their way out of the pressure they're underneath and really reach a point where they really dismantle their nuclear military capabilities, really come to the table with a willing heart to change their place in the Middle East. Let's wrap up this thought with Israel and the US can't afford to have an Iranian nuclear bomb, nor can the Saudis, nor can anyone else in the world that wants peace and good for anyone in this region, let alone Israel, of course. So we have to continue pushing until Iran dismantles its nuclear military program and ceases to use proxies to fight and spread death and destruction in this region. Hey guys, over the weekend, we aired a segment where Yair and I head up north and get beaten by the Israeli kickboxing champion. But more importantly, hear this incredible story about a place that's been war-torn and attacked that combines Druze, Arab, Jews, all fighting together and representing the state of Israel. The link appears on the screen. Make sure to check out that video and leave us a like.
Thank you, Mati, for putting some order into this chaos. Now, we will move on to Israel's most distant enemy, which is, of course, the Houthis, the terror organization from Yemen. But the moment before we get into that story, I will ask you to stop everything for a second and click on the subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you remain tuned to the truth and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And according to a report on the British Telegraph news portal, Iran has ordered its advisors and military personnel to leave Yemen, thus abandoning its Houthi allies at a time when the United States is escalating its strikes and its campaign against the Houthis. A senior Iranian official told the Telegraph that the move is intended to avoid direct confrontation with the United States in the event of an Iranian soldier that is being killed in the strikes. The official said that Iran is also scaling back its strategy of supporting a network of regional proxies instead and focus on direct threats from the United States. And according to the source, Tehran's main concerns were Trump and how to deal with him. The source added that every meeting is dominated by discussions about him, and none of the regional groups that we supported in the past are even discussed. However, the source added that the view here is that the Houthis won't be able to survive and they are living on their last months or even days, so there's no point in keeping them in our list. The Iranians certainly have good reasons of thinking that. There have been near daily strikes on the Houthis by the United States since the group chat messages from senior Trump administration's officials discussing the strikes leaked to the media last month. The strikes, which Donald Trump described as unimaginably successful, have destroyed significant military targets and terminated the commandos of the Houthis. A Pentagon spokesman said that more fighter jets would be sent to the area, but did not provide specific details. However, at the end of last month, the United States Air Force announced that a number of A-10 Thunderbolt II ground attack planes and 300 aircrew members are on their way to the Middle East. The Houthis, for their part, say that they are attacking American warships in the Red Sea, including the aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman, which has led efforts to attack them. So no ships have been hit yet, but the United States Navy said that fire is the heaviest its sailors have encountered since World War II. On Saturday, President Trump shared a video of bombs being dropped on Yemen on his troops' social media account and wrote, "Oops, these Houthis won't be attacking us anymore." President Trump has made it clear that the strikes will continue until the Houthis are no longer a threat to the freedom of navigation, and warned that the real pain is yet to come if they do not stop. At the same time, the president sent a sharp message to Iran. Support for the Houthi terrorists must cease immediately. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has presented a more positive picture, saying that the strikes have been effective in eliminating senior Houthi leaders and destroying a number of facilities used to produce advanced weaponry. And according to her, the intelligence community's assessment confirmed the damage to the organization's facilities, and the operation is contributing to the resumption of shippings in the Red Sea. And a senior Pentagon official also claims that the airstrikes have achieved their objective in the initial phase of the operation and disrupted the Houthi leaders' abilities to communicate, limiting their responses. And he also denied that the operation is planned to last 6 months despite other assessments. So here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development in this arena as well. So guys, keep supporting Israel, share and follow us. And most importantly, pray. Prayers work. So let's unite in prayer for the hostages in the Gaza Strip. We still have 59 hostages and we want them released back to Israel now. Guys, keep praying for the IDF soldiers wherever they are. If they're fighting in Lebanon, in Syria, in the Gaza Strip, or in Judea and Samaria, or protecting us in the skies against Houthi rockets. Please pray and stand with Israel, as this is a spiritual war that involves all of us. It starts in the Middle East, but it never ends in the Middle East. These terrorist organizations want to take all over the West, and I'm talking about Europe, about the United States, and basically to destroy all of our society. That's their goals. So what do? We pray. Let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem, and together we will win this war because God is on our side.